But yeah, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, so we can go ahead and get started and turn it over to Sean to, run through the proposed budget. I see you all see, the packet with the proposed budget in it. And so Sean, I'm gonna turn it over to you and let you get started.
Good evening, staff and commissioners. I do want to let you know that sort of as a matter of housekeeping, we are recording this meeting tonight. And as such, if you have any questions or general comments or any type of input, please make sure you pick up the microphone on your table and turn it on. There's a little mute button, you flip that mute button up so that we can record that in on our recording. All right, we'll get started here. So this, of course, is our fiscal year 24-25 budget committee workshop. We've got some PowerPoint slides this year, doing things a little bit different to streamline the process. So the PowerPoint slides will follow the book that you have in front of you. So if you want to look at the numbers and listen, or if you want to look at the slides, it all kind of correlates with each other. So we'll start in general fund. I'm happy to present a budget to the board tonight that does not include any tax increases. This is a balanced budget using a 27-cent tax rate for our ad valorem taxes. This is budgeted at a 97% collection rate. So for some information, we have a property value of approximately $361,826. And with a 97% collection rate, that leaves us roughly $732,966 of ad valorem taxes. The collection rate for our audit last year was 97.59%. So we are well within the means set general statute. So budgeting a 97% collection rate. A theme you'll hear throughout the night, the town staff and mayor as budget officer has formulated this budget utilizing the method that we want to budget our expenditures liberally and our revenues conservatively. So I actually keep that in mind as we go through. There's a couple of things to note here in general fund. You will see that on the bottom line, it's actually showing an $87,000 decrease in revenues this year, roughly 3.5%. That decrease is for two reasons. Number one, we have had a decrease, or we're projecting a decrease in the interest from our investments. Those are investments primarily made through capital reserves and unappropriated fund balance. But that is in a money market account right now, and we're collecting roughly 5% on those investments. We are forecasting through help North Carolina Cash Management as well as North Carolina municipalities, excuse me, that we are going to be seeing closer to 3.75% return on those investments this year. So that accounts for some of the decrease. We also do not have any loans budgeted this year. We show that in the form of a note payable. So that's a housekeeping matter, but it is important to reference as a decrease in revenue, even though it's technically not a decrease. For our debt service, you'll see that we have, it's broken up into two columns here. Column on your left-hand side is showing general fund debt service. The column on your right-hand side is showing water department and wastewater department. Those are our two enterprise fund accounts. For our general fund, our fire department, the only item on our debt service schedule for next year and beyond is our 2015 E1 Humber fire truck. That payment is $26,000. That last payment is forecasted for next year, fiscal year 25-26. Our water department, moving into the enterprise fund, our water department debt service only has two items on it. Our water tank, which is the one on 701, that's the new water tank, quote unquote, new water tank. That is a payment of $34,570. That last payment is scheduled for fiscal year 28-29. We also have 3 public works trucks that were upgraded, I believe it was last year, in the sum of $22,043. Public works trucks, like a lot of other expenditures in our water and wastewater accounts, are split 50-50. So you'll see those reflected again in wastewater department That last payment is scheduled for next year, fiscal year 25-26. In our wastewater department, we have a fairly large, but healthy, sum of debt service on the account. And these largely, in part, are due from phase one of our sewer sanitary improvement project. That's $139,000. That last payment is fiscal year 2040-2041. And phase two of our sewer sanitary improvement project, $160,000. That last payment is fiscal year 43-44. And again, you see the three public works trucks, that 50% cost of $22,000 noted as debt service in our wastewater department. That last payment again is next year, 25-26. Moving into public officials department, you will see that our bottom line expenditures have increased from $49,000 to $50,000. That there's roughly $1,000 increase in training and education that we have budgeted for this year. In administration, our expenditures have increased from $665,000 to $704,000. These increases are largely the result of salaries, which have increased roughly 15% across administration. And when you combine those salaries with benefits associated with them, health insurance, dental insurance, vision insurance, 401k, pension, etc., that equates to about a $50,000 increase in that expenditure column. There's a couple of reasons for this. Of course, we did add Mary Jo, our finance director, in fiscal year 23-24. And as any budget season, the town staff has really tried to research and make contact with other municipalities in our region and in our county to stay consistent and competitive with their pay structure as well. And then there's a $10,000 increase in our auditing contract moving forward. Our finances are growing more complicated. We have more grants. We have more single audits that are required as a result of said grants. So that price has increased. We were notified by. In the CMRA department, that's our post office department, you can see that the budget remains virtually unchanged. The item bullet point that I wanted to point out to the commissioners is that we now have 2 postal clerks. So those positions are filled. We are operating at full staff, which we have not done probably in 2 years. Tommy and Emma Dean are those 2 employees. In our zoning department, we essentially have expenditures that are decreasing from $6,000 to $3,700. This is largely accounted just from departmental supplies decreasing. We had some specific needs last year. Those costs have decreased moving. For our police department, we have expenditures that are decreasing from $843,000 to $785,000. And that's largely an account for not budgeting a new police vehicle in this year's budget. That's a $72,000 savings roughly. On a positive note, we do have, for the first time in some time, a full police department. That's a big deal. We're heading in the right direction in our services that we provide in the community, particularly on the police side of public safety. We have 7 full-time officers. We did add an officer last year. And while we were able to fill that position, we've played musical chairs in that department all year long. So we have 7 officers now, full-time officers, and 4 part-time officers. And we continue to look for grants and look for ways to improve our public safety capabilities to the community. In our fire department, the other public safety department we have here at the town of White Lake, our expenditures have decreased from $410,000 to $351,000, roughly $352,000. These are largely accounted for by decreased contributions to capital reserves for our fire truck and our fire department building. And I really would encourage the board to think about capital reserves as a savings account. There are some years where we can contribute to the savings account. There are some years where things are a little bit tighter and we have to reduce those contributions to savings. So I really would encourage you to think about capital reserves in those terms. So this year we're not able to make the contribution that we have in the past. However, as you'll see in a later slide, we do have some money in capital reserves, again, our savings account set aside for these 2 uses. So there is some money there should the town incur a need. There are no fire vehicles purchased in this year's budget. We did have a shared expenditure through our ARPA funds last year in the tune of $34,000. That was for our first responder vehicle. It's the F-350 that you've seen. If you haven't, I encourage you to go look at it. But that was upgraded in 1999 Chevrolet Suburban. I know the fire department is proud of that vehicle and certainly doing good things for us in our response times. But you'll see us, it is and it isn't, but in the housekeeping side of the budget for governmental finance purposes, it shows as a $34,000 savings. And then we did budget one new set of turnout gear this year. In the past, we've been a little more proactive. We've been able to be a little more proactive the way the finances failed, and we were able to purchase more than one set of gear last year. So that's why you see a $13,000 savings. Again, on a positive note, I think it's important to bring some recognition to the Chief Dale and his staff. We have 43 volunteers. And at a time where volunteerism across our country and across our state is greatly declining, our fire department is really setting the way and leading by example. And I do want to inform the board, as of today, we do have a fire insurance rating of 4, which does factor into things like insurance ratings and cost of insurance for homeowners and businesses. And that fire rating of 4 is equivalent to Elizabethtown's fire rating with a full paid staff. So the work that our volunteers are doing really is incredible in that regard. In the street department, our expenditures have decreased roughly $10,000 there. And we can account for this due to a stabilization in fuel prices over last year's budget forecast. And as a result, staff is able to accurately represent those costs this year, moving out of coronavirus primarily, and the economy stabilizing some. Of course, the election's coming up, so might be getting the horse in front of the cart there, or the cart in front of the horse there. But as of right now, that's what our forecast models show. And there are no capital outlay expenditures budgeted this year for multi-use path or for any new equipment that the street department would use, which is roughly a saving of $7,000. For our power bill department, this revenue is received from the state. And I want to make sure the board understands that those contributions come into the town primarily based on roads that are public roads, and that's through a mileage of those public roads. And there is some, a much more minor contribution factored in by population size. So we're projected to receive $28,000. That's a small increase over last year. And for this department specifically, because it is so regulated by the state of North Carolina, our expenditures in this department, whether it's minor repairs or budgeted for road materials or equipment to service roads, those expenditures are roughly $10,500. So you take expenditures less or revenue less expenditures, and that will give you your capital reserve total specifically for power, which is $17,659. So all together, you can see down there at the bottom, we are forecasted to have $101,975 in our capital reserves for street repairs. That does take into account the project that you've seen ongoing in town right now. We've been able to repave a couple of streets. We've been able to repair 7 or 8 patch locations. We've been able to work on the dip, for lack of a better term, that was in White Lake Drive right here across the police department. And there's a couple of other minor things, but that's the first paving project we've had in quite a while. And that's largely due to our sewer sanitary improvement project. Of course, we want to get a sewer project done like that before we start paving anything. You don't want to repair a road and then rip it right back up to make improvements to infrastructure. So it's by design. We are moving forward with making some improvements to our town roads, and we'll continue to look for opportunities in the future. It's not uncommon to get opportunities when paving companies are in the town, whether they're working for a corporation here in town or doing something nearby, to call and check in and see if we need anything at that time. So as we look for ways to save money, the mobilization fee that goes along with paving projects, it's a great way to save money and stretch that $101,000 out even farther than it would otherwise. In sanitation this year, we have seen a 3.7% CPI increase from waste management. That's out of our control, it's in our contract, and it's 3.7% this year. That equates to roughly 73 cents for residential services, that's sanitation and recycling combined. That cost is going to vary for businesses, but that's largely driven by the size of the dumpster that they have and the amount of approvals that dumpster receives. For our lake management department in fiscal year 24-25, we are projecting to receive $58,640, which is received annually in the form of lake management fees. That is on our utility bills and collected in a separate pot of money. I'll skip down to the expenses. That's $39,160. That accounts for everything that we have ongoing, pre-budgeted expenses. So we're able to make a $16,626 contribution to capital reserve from those expenses. We're also able to contribute $12,000 of ad valorem taxes this year to our lake management department. So when it's all said and done, we're looking at when you account for the contributions that I just described, roughly a $475,000 capital reserve for aquatic control, which is made up of both aquatic control, again, in the form of lake management fees, and wastewater contribution that was set aside as part of the designation from the state. And I think it was around 2018, memory serves, reading through some of the material, but we have 475,000 there. We also have roughly 35,000 or so set aside from stormwater management fees that can also be utilized in a lake management project. So roughly $500,000 is the number I want you to remember as we move forward and work on various lake management projects of money that we have sitting aside specifically for that purpose. In our water department, we are proposing a 5% increase this year on base rates. If you recall, last year, we did not have an increase in our water department. And this year, we are proposing an increase on the base rate as well as the tiers. What that accounts to on the base rate is 69 cents. And the tiers is going to scale based on consumption. There are no changes proposed to our fee schedule, except for water tap fee increases. Those are basically a pass through. Whatever we're charged by the tap companies, we basically pass that along to the customer. And those have increased considerably in the past 2 to 3 years. For department expenditures, they have increased from $923,000 to $943,000. We can account for those by a capital outlay purchase of a mini excavator. That's $45,000, but it's actually split between water and wastewater. That's made or proposed for utility repair. We do have some very narrow streets and very narrow easements around town where a mini excavator can benefit the crew better than a full-size backhoe. We have a $23,000 reduction in capital reserve, and that's still giving us a $77,000 contribution to our capital reserve for the water system improvements. We kept it at $77,000 to keep the 5% increase at that point. We do have 2 projects planned for our water department in the upcoming year. Those are hydrant replacements in the sum of $46,000, and that is 1 new chlorine building. I think there were some pictures that our public works director shared during his report at our last budget retreat of the condition of our current chlorine building. So the plan is to try and do 1 of these every year until we're able to replace them in just 1. In our wastewater department, we are not proposing an increase. No increase this year on the rate, base rate, or the tiers. The expenditures in this department have virtually remained the same. $1.1 million in 23-20, $1.1 million in 24-25. Again, there are no changes to our fee schedule, late fees, etc. There is, except for our wastewater tap fee increase. This mirrors the water tap. They're one and the same. The expenses of those, or the cost of those, unfortunately, has increased dramatically. We have no choice but to increase those. This year's proposed budget in wastewater, because there are really no changes in the bottom line, I want to highlight a couple of projects that we do have planned. We're going to start working on some of our lift stations. There's a couple of things we can do strategically. Flight path faults come to mind that give us better preparedness for storms and better ability to react when the time comes. Of course, you see the mini excavator, that's the other 50% budgeted for that utility repair. We're going to upgrade and in some ways replace chlorine contact chamber. They're listed as improvements, so we'll call them improvements. But this is at our wastewater treatment facility. Again, our public works director talked about that some in his presentation to the board last month. And then we are able, after all is said and done, we're able to contribute $63,000 to our capital reserve for wastewater improvements on our wastewater system. Just briefly, I want to touch on the public works department. I want to remind the board that we have come a long way. There was some needs there. There was some equipment that needed to be replaced, and there was general maintenance upgrades that we needed to oversee. And we were in a holding pattern with no public works director. Bringing Kevin on board and working to get the rest of the staff certified and get them some education and improve our efficiency and effectiveness. We have come a long way. This budget increases that improvement in public works, but just the success of the wastewater improvement, sewer sanitary improvement project has been roughly a 25 to 35% reduction in I&I, which is a tremendous number, and all across our system has seen a reduced strain in the system as a result of that. So I do want to commend our public works department and our public works director for a job well done in this department over the past couple of years. So that brings us to our capital reserve. You've heard me talk about capital reserve a lot tonight. And again, I want to remind you, this is a savings account. Essentially, the way we utilize this, it's a budget fee for our budget in those terms. For general fund, and this number does account for quality control. That's not listed here because it was on a previous slide, but we have $543,723 in our general fund capital reserves. The administration building, separation allowance for our law enforcement when they retire, a new police vehicle, a fire truck, fire department building, stormwater, multi-use pad, and mosquito truck are all accounted for in the general fund capital reserves. On our enterprise side, for water and sewer, we have 1.4 million in capital reserves. These capital reserves are accounted for by the water system improvement, the well, number four well, trucks, which is split 50-50, so you see water there. Public works buildings split 50-50, so you see water there. Wastewater system improvement, trucks for wastewater contribution, the wastewater treatment plant, the bar screen, which is a specific treatment device at the treatment plant. And you can't see it cut off on down there, but it's public work building the wastewater contribution. So kind of in conclusion, I wanted to update the board on where we were with grants that we received. And these grants are grants that have specifically been procured by town staff, and they do not take into account ARPA monies. So there was some ARPA money that this actually budget allowed us. Really, it was a catch-up mechanic for us. Other towns, they were able to invest in their water and wastewater system. We did not receive that amount of money, so we used that as a catch-up mechanic for our departments of capital outlay expenditures, one-time cost. For our grants we procured, you'll see the streetscape improvement plan that is completed, the stormwater plan that is completed, the water AIA, which is water asset inventory assessment, that is all going. Our finance software, that's just started. And good news there, we did receive word that we met with them yesterday from independent auditing firms, part of this process, that the town's finances are now in such good shape, we have been recommended to basically be at the top of that list of conversion. So we went through the audit, we went through the catch-up mechanic of the 2 audits really. And I know there was some skepticism on the delay of the audits in general. Of course, you can account for that with a various number of things, which we've all talked about, and we'll let that lie. But the takeaway here is that town finances are in great shape, and that we are in such good shape. The North Carolina League of Municipalities is considering implementing this finance software for us this year. instead of 2025 or 2026, this upcoming year. So, again, that's a good thing for us. That was a big thing on our audit. It really, our current system is about 13 years old, even though it's new to us. And this new system and this new software, I believe, and our finance team believes, will really enable us to be much more proactive in terms of meeting deadlines and providing equipment, providing internal controls, and adhering to North Carolina general accounting rules as we move forward with our audits. So you also see a legal assistance grant there. That's to review ARPA policies, specifically to double check accounts and compliance. But the big one there is the stormwater ordinance. That was a section of that legal assistance grant we received, and that is to create the stormwater ordinance based on input from the planning board and based on continued conversation with the planning board as we receive drafts and stormwater ordinance, as we receive more information to finalize that process and bring a proposal forward the town commissioners for adoption. We received the cybersecurity service grant. This one is going to be a grant awarded that's based on billable hours. So you'll see TBD there because we don't have a number to plug in there. But this grant is going to basically go through our system top to bottom, exploit any vulnerabilities, and it does provide money within the grant structure to improve hardware in the town, as well as improve cybersecurity in the town. The lead and copper is a big one. We just received word this week that we will be awarded this grant. It's a 60-40 split, which is a little bit less than federal guidelines. The federal guideline for a grant this size is 80-20. With our demographics, we were awarded a 60-40 split. So what that equates to is 1.2 million in grant money and $800,000 town commitment. I do want to let the board know that that $800,000 is factored into our water grants as they are now. So that 5% proposal that we're proposing takes that into consideration. Again, we should see a award letter for that probably in the next 60 days, 30 to 60 days. And with that, I'm more than happy to take questions. But that concludes the proposal for the 2024-2025 proposal.
Tax rate.
Will you grab the microphone, Commissioner?
Tax rate. I think I had 27 cents. That line. 27 cents.
27 cents.
Yeah. You know, I said earlier, maybe we'd be imagined and lower our tax rate. We always had a lower tax rate. I reckon the first tax increase we really had was in 18. Now our property values have gone, and now we've maintained that tax rate, and see some expenditures have gone. So let's see. I saw some training, $15,000 on some classes, continuing ed. What page that was on? I'm talking about.
It's administration.
Okay. I think we had like 5,000 and now it's 15,000. I don't know how we are, our policy or procedures. I know in the past, when we had police officers and people in admin, we wanted to improve their education, we're about that. But we've got to limit it to either money and time away from the office. We get people away from this office and nobody answers the telephone, and we're going up $15,000, pretty big increase. And it's mighty nice of the town to provide this to our employees, but now on the flip side, we have to pay motel rooms and expenses and out of the office. Might be some tight time. There's another line on that. The pay. Let's go ahead and get to the heart of the matter. 2.5%. We didn't talk about that. I named the merit 2.5%. Several years ago, we did and I'll go ahead and say it. I'll jump up. we did and it may be time to look at our wages, because I've had people say they needed more money compared to other cities and municipalities. But a lot of times we say we compare ourselves to Elizabethtown. Might be better compared to Gulf, compared to Dublin, compared to people our size. Pretty strong. These wages here, we increase all our departments. I would be more inclined looking at 2%. I don't see a real big year coming ahead. And maybe look at doing some adjustment on some department heads. What's happened, if you look at that percentage, that higher number of figures, higher paid people getting a bigger lion's share of the money versus the smaller amount. Something I want the board to take into consideration. Of course, we've increased the number of employees as well. I assume here, under the benefits, the town's still paying 100% of the health insurance for our employees.
Yes, sir. On that note, we have had some, and I touched on it a little bit with the salaries and the benefits that resulted in a $50,000 increase. We have had roughly a 60% increase in workers' comp, a 17% increase in property and liability, a 17% increase in health insurance, and a couple of other smaller increases along the way. As a result of that, we've had to decrease our health insurance for our employees. We are no longer getting the same level of health insurance that we've gotten in years past.
Because they're not paying.
It's still paid 100%. It's not the same one.
Paying 100%. For most companies now is a share in that cost. But again, I don't know what your limitations, if there's a higher deductible, whatever, we're paying 100%. But from a county point, looking as for taxpayers, what we're providing, kind of got a little heartburn on the water increase. Like I said, with our tax, we can't lower our taxes. I just see a year coming up. Who knows what this season is gonna be? I just see we've had some growth. We had a lot of prosperity. Again, we need to save some money and be conservative on the restraint side. But those are just three components I've seen, just looking through it.
If I could, I would like to say in terms of saving money, we have had at least $150,000 rolling into unappropriated fund balance. So we've made gains there as presented at the audit. And over the past 3 years, our unappropriated fund balance has increased almost 25%. So we are saving money in that.
Our income is up well. Now, that's, I mean, you
There
just,
is.
yeah, I mean, either you got to raise your property tax or your income, you know. So it just happened. Somebody pulled up, throw it in here. The taxpayers are paying these taxes on these properties, especially on the commercial side. We got short weeks and people trying to make it year round. I hope we just keep having fiscal restraint, but that's where your revenue's coming.
Sure.
You know, always glad to look at any of it, but you were talking about comparing, maybe we'll compare us with Garland, instead of Elizabethtown, for example. Well, you know, the primary problem I have with that is, I don't know of anybody we've had in at least any type of recent past that it's been a competition between whether or not they were coming to Garland or coming to White Lake. A lot of times we have competition that it's whether they're going to White Lake or going to Elizabethtown. And I would say in addition to that, you know, without probably overstating the obvious, it's not going to apply at all, for example, to the police department, for example, because they don't have a police force. So I don't know how we compare the income that, you know, would be received or paid by Garland when they don't have a police force, they don't pay that. But the main thing is, you know, the people that we're competing with are, I mean, it's Elizabethtown, it's Bladenboro, it's towns that are in, our area here. And we have tried real hard to, and you know, I'm just delighted to run for a full, 7-man police force now and have full, staff in here. And I think that's great. And we've been able to do that through the chief's hard work, and we've been able to do it because we're able to offer a competitive salary. And I would submit to you that a lot of times the cost of turnover is a whole lot more than what the cost is of retaining good employees. I think, you know, when we're looking at the 2.5% that you were talking about, again, we've looked at surrounding towns that we are competing with, and we are trying to stay competitive with those towns, because I think to bring in good folks to work for the town of White Lake, which we have certainly accomplished in the last few years, that we need to stay very competitive with that. And I think, you know, certainly we look at the health insurance, but, you know, we want to stay competitive in that regard also. And quite frankly, I think that's an excellent benefit that we provide to our employees. I know the new employees that have come in, I think that's been if you talk to them, I think that's been a big factor in what they want to do. And there may have been other things you mentioned. The other thing that I heard you say something about was the water.
Yeah.
Was water increase. Well, you know, the thing I would point out there, as Sean just showed in his presentation that he gave, of course, is that's all really dealing with the $2 million that we've got to work on the copper line replacements. We are fortunate receiving a 60-40 grant, and we're getting $1,200,000 out of that 2 million, but we've got 800,000 to pay. And what we did in setting up the budget was looked at that 5% increase to use that to be able to balance our budget so that we could pay our payments on the $800,000 that we're going to have to put into it. And if we don't have that increase, I don't know where we're going to get that money from without going in the hole. So, I mean, I just say it seemed to me when Sean and I were working on it and setting up the budget, I mean, I'll say that he and I came to the same conclusion on that, because we sat down and discussed at some length what we were going to have in the way of additional income as far as paying that replacement of the copper lines and all. And I say this sincerely, if you have a different source that you think we could fund that from without doing a the 5% water increase, I'm more than glad to look at that. But I just don't know. I couldn't come up with another way to be able to bring that revenue in. So.
You got a lot of folks, talks from the citizens that not here. Just here during summer months. Went home, and they're saying they're paying water rate they haven't used. They got about a point. And they see these expenses going up, taxes. And you got people with fixed income. And that's the issue I'm willing to share. And maybe garden was the wrong word, maybe fair. But I'm saying, you know, Lake County, maybe New York might be a different comparison as well. But I would like to see if we somehow we could reduce our tax rate. Yeah, we stay at 27. We got a balanced budget. We're just spending more money. If we're going to raise these fees, I think we should give it not much of a fee. We don't want sanitation costs. We can offset some of that cost. It's real easy to make a hit that budget, and we spend up to that point. And I would like to see if there's some way if we can drop. And I know 1 cent is not a big deal, but you know, in the big scheme of things.
To put that in perspective, 1 cent is roughly $30,000.
Yeah. And Tim, I would say if we want to look at doing that, like, and I would say to everybody that's in here tonight, because I've said it every year I've helped with doing a budget here. Of course, y'all all realize that a budget is two faceted. You've got an income side and you've got an expense side. I don't mean to make it oversimplified, but the thing about it is, if any of, and me included, on it with Sean, I have to always keep in mind, like I ask y'all to, that if you come up and you say, well, okay, we need an additional expenditure. Here's what we need to get. Then it's not really fair. And for me either, I put myself in the same boat. I can't go to Sean with setting a budget and say, well, Sean, look, we really need this expenditure here. Sean's going to say to me the same thing I'd say to him when we're working on the budget. He's going to say, well, Goldston, that's fine. If you want a $30,000 expenditure, where are we going to get $30,000 on the revenue side? And of course, the same thing applies in reverse. And all I'm saying is, if we're talking about a $30,000 decrease in ad valorem taxes, we've got to cut out at least $30,000 of expenses. And the only other thing I would say on that is, as Sean started out saying, and it's what I've always tried to do in a budget, I do try to estimate our income conservatively and our expenses liberally. And y'all have seen from the last couple of audits that we've had come in that we have had an overage. We've had a surplusage that has gone into in administration, has gone into unappropriated fund balance. Of course, that's not the way of water and wastewater, because that's an enterprise fund, so that operates differently. But in the administrative side, we have been doing that, and again, that has succeeded in, for some time now, getting us off the watch list with LGC. And it's something that we need to keep working on, because when we had the expenditure come up with the alum treatment and some other things involved with the lake, we spent over $750,000, and we substantially depleted our fund balance. And LGC said, folks, y'all got to get that back up. We can't have you doing that. And we have worked diligently to do that. So there's my point is, there's got to be some overage in that, so that we can take whatever overage we can accumulate, put it into our unappropriated fund balance. Now, when we get that up to a point that we are able to have a comfortable margin there. I mean, at one point before we had the situation come up with the lake, we were over $1 million in unappropriated fund balance. And even that is less than what LGC and the league recommend.
They recommend about 60%. We're currently at 53%.
Yeah, and so we're getting there. We're working on that, coming into line with it. And Tim, I would just say to you that, once we can get it back up to that level where we've got a little bit of breathing room there, where we've got it up to the level that we need to, and I think we're on absolutely the right track to do that. Then I'm if you want to look then at doing something to decrease the tax rate, if that's what the board wants to do, I think when we do our budget retreat next time around, then that's when that ought to come up and see where we're at with that, and see if we could do it. And I think we need to take something else into account on that too. Terry had mentioned, I think at the last meeting, that we need to go some further out with planning, and I think that's a good idea. I think it's a good thing to do that. We have been so tied up the last 2 or 3 years, with several years before that, with having to deal with COVID, having so much unknown with that it's been really difficult because of that to to do a budget, I mean, and used to, you know, a number of years ago, we were depositing our accounts at, 6-7% and even higher, and we were earning huge amounts of money on that. We were bringing in darn near the amount on interest that we were bringing in on sales tax. I mean, it was a big part of our budget, you know.
And the other line item was the all 26,000, that was a pretty big shock along, like 15,000 training. $30,000 drop to 1%. Or maybe a big factor would be hire that person to help us promote like Lake. I know Dean, Terry, they said having a part-time person help promoting Lake was the chamber's back in that. I'm all about spending money if I get a return on my investment, but I ain't about spending a bunch of money.
Yeah.
It's just not saying.
Well, and that's precisely the reason I say that needs to be looked at in a planning session in what we're gonna do on that, because now I don't know exactly what those expenditures would be. Like, for example, I know the chamber after this year is not gonna be doing the water festival, as I understand it. And so obviously we've got to look at some point at what we're gonna do as a town for that. But I just don't think now is the appropriate time to cut. I think we need to look at those things, see what we got to have in the way of expenditures. And you may be right, Tim. I mean, it may come up that we can say, all right, we need to bring in whatever to deal with the water festival, whatever we need to do to help with that. But I think we look at that before we start decreasing tax rates. And I just tell you that I'm, you know, again, from my personal point of view, I'm so proud of the employees that we've brought on and that we've remained competitive in hiring folks. And I don't believe this is the time to start cutting the benefits that we provide to our employees, because I think they work real hard for us, and I think that they earn and deserve what they get, and I think it ought to be left in that place at this point. You know, when we get a good unappropriated fund balance that gives us a certain level of comfort, then we can start looking at other places we can cut. But I think we would be penny wise and pound foolish if we start cutting the benefits that employees receive. And quite frankly, I think it would be kind of a slap in the face to them. I mean, but I understand that's my personal.
I'm gonna tell you personally, I think we're in the discussion, you do the tax cut, I did put the 2.5% wage in that. And if I'll say one thing, Pat Taylor's been the most loyal employee, probably longer than anybody. You know, I don't apologize for it. Probably about to pay now, $6,000 a month. I think bothers me immensely. What she's been through. I don't know how. I'm kind of concerned about that now. She wears a lot of hats in this organization.
Just to follow up on the strategic plan update, there will be an update on the May board meeting about. It wasn't on this agenda, this is an adjourned meeting, can't add to the agenda, but I have been in communication with David Richardson, the Council of Governments, to have some information to bring back on what that looks like.
Yeah, I think we do all know the cost of everything going up. To Timbo's point, we do need to be proactive on improving revenue to the town. So the answer can't always be go up on water, go up on property taxes. And I've addressed this with you, Sean, before. We really have need to dive into what more coastal communities are doing like our town. We've got a ton of campers. Jake and I've got them. Timbo's got them. Camp Water's got them. We need to tap in on revenue to that. Our fire chief said he needs a new bag. Every department needs something. If we charge $50 for an annual medallion for every camper on an annualized basis, our revenue is going to increase at least $100,000, if not more. We need to be proactive on things like that instead of, and I'm not discrediting, I don't know exactly what Timbo, not discrediting what he's saying, but he's right in the fact that we can't just always look for increase to a taxpayer, increase Because my taxes are outrageous. I mean, White Lake, Goldston's Beach is $140,000, what we pay up there. It's mainly going to the county. At the end of the day, we need to go back to the county and do what we did, and Timbo helped us do, and get $50,000 from them and keep appropriations and stuff that's coming back to the town. But we do need to be proactive, so that we can continue to take care of our staff, take care of our fire department, our police department, and drive revenue. There's other ways to drive revenue with just, water and taxes.
I would submit to you, Commissioner Hilton, that
And I will also say, in that last meeting we were in, our water rates were effectively fairly low. And they told us, you remember, they told us, hey, you will have to raise your rates some so that you can put more money back towards those programs. Meaning that we don't have the matching funds available. But that doesn't mean that we just have to go up on rates for water. We can go up in other places, try to drive that up.
Yeah, and Dean, let me point out, I don't disagree at all with what you're saying. And understand that, what we're working on here tonight is doing the budget. I mean, we gotta pass budget. But that doesn't mean that we are prohibited from doing anything from this point forward, and we don't have to wait another year to, on what you're talking about doing. I mean, sometimes it's, like if you're gonna charge a camper fee or something like that. I have no problem at all with looking at that. And we can consider it as a board. I think we need to see, what kind of things we're talking about. When we would put it into effect. And then we can work it into our budget as we go along. And I agree with you. That's a way to increase revenue without having to increase the tax rate. So anytime you want us our staff to look at and say, okay, let's do a camper fee or whatever, let's go ahead. I mean, we can't do it in this budget because we've got to look at what we're going to do on it. And when we put it into effect to see what revenue it would bring in. But I would encourage you to go ahead and, talk with Sean. I'll be glad to talk with you on it too. And let's come up with a proposal for the board and we can get to work on it.
We like, those of it that want to build houses instead of these campers, that would be a lot better, having houses and campers. But we're providing the same service to that camper as the house whole.
Well,
I don't know here, let's work some of this fair, but
yeah, and there's no doubt that, we get hit pretty hard here because of the number of campers. Now, I'm not down in campgrounds, anything like that. But on a home, you're talking about hundreds, even thousands of dollars on the taxes. And a camper, sometimes we're talking about literally a few dollars a year because it's like an automobile that depreciates and it brings in almost nothing on the tax base. And that's the reason I like, Dean saying, well, we can look at doing it.
Money, we get sales tax revenues where we think that people are taking in sales tax. We're taking in sales tax. I don't know that all our businesses around here are taking in sales tax. That's something else we need to look into. Sean and I have had this discussion, and Sean's got data on the permits for trailers. I was just simply bringing it up because to Timbo's point, we were talking about revenue sources. So
Well,
Sean has been on that, and he has looked into different towns.
we've got a lot of irons in the fire. There's a lot of legalities. With North Carolina minimum housing coming into play and say, well, campers on a house. No, it's not. There's some very undefined questions. To the point, it's well received. We had a 40% reduction in campers in both of them this year. It's coming back to the town, so it's a substantial decrease in those terms. We'll continue looking into that. The time is right, to, of course, make sure we're operating in the legalities of general statutes. We can bring a proposal back.
I would just say from a administrative standpoint, you look around the room now and we're in really good shape compared to previous years with department heads, with professional services and all of those things. And all those things have a cost. Bruce has come in here many times whereas wasn't fully staffed, couldn't find people. We were having to adjust pay rates. I think we're just probably where we need to be now to be able to maintain what we've got and keep the people that we have. And we've got some very highly skilled people. So That would be my comment from that standpoint. That 15,000 though, that's 15,000 we've already spent this year. Is that right?
15,000.
The training and education and admin.
Correct.
Yeah, so it goes back down to what it has normally been next year and that.
There is an increase there, but it's not 15,000.
Okay.
I think it goes back down to 5 or 6.
Yeah, around 5.
So my recommendation is that if we are going to pay $15,000 and get top-notch employees that are well-trained, there needs to be a contract in place. So we don't want to spend our $15,000, equip them for a job somewhere else. We only had 5,000, but we've already spent 15,000.
That's for this year's budget, 23-24. I'm talking about our 24-25 budget.
But that
Be
was
the
budgeted for this year, but it was
No,
spent.
No,
So
I,
who's to say next year, they won't go over the budget $10,000 again?
well,
Train them.
we're
I'm saying,
not gonna do it unless we bring it back up to the board to do it, because we've got it in there at $5,000 or $6,000, because we think that's what we'll do. I
A
don't.
lot of that cost was incurred by, programs simply opening back up. We didn't have a number for budget last year because COVID of the programs completely shut training opportunities down for the
but did
winter.
you spend $2,000 over what was budgeted for that this year?
Yes and no. No, that's not necessarily correct, because if you look at the vehicle reimbursement, and you look at the,
Yeah, that's 1,000 more.
fuel, you'll see that those are under budget. So there is a balance in that. The $15,000 in full transparency, there is some miscoding taking place in the finance department. So I would encourage you to add all 3 of those line items. Was it overspent? Maybe. Was it overspent by 15,000 or 10,000?
Things need to be coded correctly, because that's the way we look.
I agree. We've had that conversation.
And when I asked to take a class today for 250, I was told there was no money for that. School of Government, Patrice said she was pretty sure the money was there, but I didn't push it because I don't feel like they're seasoned veterans that are telling me there's no money for that.
I would just say to that point, it's general practice for government to cut spending all around the time you requested that. That wasn't anything to do with money not being there as much as it was to do with limiting expenditures. There is $1,000 that we have budgeted in the future per your request, so there is money available in the future.
I was told that there wasn't money. Okay, again, I think to protect us, there needs to be some kind of clause in the contract that says if we're paying for their education, they need to stay with us for a certain number of years or pay back what the town has contributed to their education.
We can look into that. That's not common practice across the industry. There's no employee here with contract outside of myself. It could be written into my contract, absolutely. And I don't mind amending my contract to say something like that. But for the other employees, they are not contracted.
Okay, anything else anyone's got in regard to the budget?
Just wanted a little clarification, first time working through this, so to, Commissioner Hilton's earlier point about feeding possibly for campers, Sean, get a good answer about legalities and all that type of stuff, but let's say, more elementary, rental services, if we wanted to have a permit fee for anybody renting a golf cart. And Mayor Womble, you can help me with this, but if this is the proposed budget workshop, at what point do we, suggest these things? You know, in the previous, budget meeting, the department heads proposed things, but how can you clarify that process on, implementing that stuff? Because I see all this is tightened up and professional, but I just want to know for future, how to go about that in an appropriate manner.
Sure. Yeah, I think the best thing to do with that is like any proposal we have going forward. The reason I said it, right now we're working on the budget. There's nothing we can do in it for this year. I mean, we're setting the 24-25 budget. But all you need to do to kick that off is if you have a way that you think we can come in and increase our revenues, then just submit it to Sean. Sean always talks with me on that. We meet most every day, and we will take a look at that. And then generally it requires a little bit of study and work to see, okay, if we do this in a particular area, if we were to do so much per camper, or if we were to do so much for every golf cart rental or whatever, then we need to look at it to see, how are we going to be able to enforce it? How much is it going to be? How much is it going to bring in for us? And that way, once we do that, you were asking about procedure, the way that works is once we do that and we have a handle on it, then the following year, we can look at putting it in the budget because we'll know when I'm saying it won't work for this coming year's budget, we just don't have the figures on it. I can't put in an income amount without having an absolute guess as to what it'd be. But once we look at those and come up with that, then we can absolutely put it in the next budget year because we've got a confidence level on it. We can say, okay, we can do this. We can raise $10,000 on this. And, to Tim's point, if we come in and we raise X number of dollars by doing various things, then I think it's appropriate to say, well, okay, we got this amount in revenue. We're still adding to our unappropriated fund balance. If we want to do a 1 cent tax increase, if we've got the revenue on the other side, that's going to more than cover it. We can, we can look at doing that, but at least we've got the figures in place.
Just to add on to that, anytime is the time to bring that up. Particularly anytime outside of a meeting, you want to bring it up at a meeting and ask staff to bring back a report at a future meeting, that can also be done. But I think any of the commissioners that have been here for some time will tell you that they have contacted me personally since I've been here at any time and asked that, and I've always followed up. And just to clarify on the permit, Chief, you contacted about 10 municipalities. We went through that conversation last summer and the year before that, and we were told not just no, but it was overwhelming that it was not something we should consider. So that, I know it's an example. I just wanted to provide some information.
Sean, what number of personal property taxes do you have coming in as far as revenue from these cameras? You know, a number,
There is a number I provided to pull for you. Like I said,
like how many are listed?
it's about 40% less than what it was. It's in this book right here. Cameron, you want to keep that number going.
So is there a number, Amber, to the point of like, there's 2,000 registered, where
There's a number, and they register them as unlicensed motor vehicles.
registered in the town or in the county?
They are not always registered in town, but there are some campgrounds that are overwhelmingly registered in town. If that answers your question.
So Goldston, my point in saying that is when you go to Emerald Eye, for example, you buy a $25 sticker and you have it registered. If it's on a site, a permanent site, it has to be registered in the county. So we're probably missing out on revenue because we don't have any tracking, and that's not you, or any of the staff here, we just have never done it before. So my point is, if we could figure out a tracking mechanism to that, me as a property owner and a camper coming into my place, I don't know if it's registered in Raleigh, or Federal, or wherever. But if we could charge, if the town would say, hey, you gotta get a medallion, or you gotta get a sticker, or whatever, it's $25, and by the way, you gotta show your registration in the county, then we're probably missing out on more revenue than we think we are. Maybe not a huge number, but it might be $200,000.
Sure, it's definitely something to look into. I know that, and before I got here, there was a letter sent out to the community to encourage residents to register not just their campers and mobile homes, but also their cars in White Lake if they have residents in White Lake. And we did see an increase as a result of that. But there's definitely capture revenue.
So last year it's about 34,000, and this year it's down to 18,000.
How many specifically? Give me a unit number right there in your front.
952 records.
I think that
Say,
versus four.
I do not have that figure from last year.
The county doesn't usually share what the figure was last year, they just share the dollar.
would that be cars or would that be cars and insurance?
That's not cars.
Okay, so, yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, that's a big one. Dale knows how many campers are in my campground, campground water, and Kim's campground, and a whole lot more than I know. You know, so we're missing out a lot of revenue, and that's a place where we can grab revenue to help give our departments. I'm not trying to get revenue to hoard it, I'm trying to get revenue to say, if these guys need something, let's provide it. But let's don't always do it on the backs of the taxpayer where it's easy to grab. Let's get it in more difficult places, but let's do it, let's do it all together.
Emerald has come up as somebody that is doing something like that. So we're in the process of reviewing. I'm working with school government on some, more on the legality side, just to make sure that general statutes give us the authority to administer a fee of that nature.
I have an explanation of water control expenditures.
The quality control expenditures are made up of the cost of testing water samples. Of course, there is Diane's contract involved with that. There's some shipping costs that are involved in that. And there is a miscellaneous item involved in that. There's also a 50% cost share study that North Carolina State University provides involved with that. And I believe that is the total sum.
I ain't gonna be the big dog there, but we might be planning food for additional funding. Fire department.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. There's a transition plan and conversation in the beginning. And we are exploring things like the SAFER grant, that North Carolina offers as a way of transitioning in firefighters. Yes, sir.
Tim, we've had a number of conversations on that because, as Sean pointed out, the fact that we have 43 volunteers in this, and how many of those are first responders?
About 22 of them.
About 22 of them. I mean, it's just amazing. We're more than half, and I don't know how you do it, but that is a terrific thing. We understand that, that's coming. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Dale puts his heart, life, and soul in this, but we ain't gonna always have Dale. They'll hope to stay with us a long time coming. But you do, there's no telling how many hours we couldn't pay you on an hourly basis. But, we're gonna have to, all the departments are doing it. We're gonna have to go to more pay. We just hadn't done it up to this point because we got so darn many volunteers, and that's great. But we gotta work on it, and we are looking at that to see what we can do.
I would say that would definitely be a topic of conversation for that strategic planning process.
And we're, just to let you know, and I don't mean to prolong this, but there are a lot of things that we're looking at, and maybe we need to talk about that as a board, more on an ongoing basis. But, like, for example, Dale said, we're gonna be in need of a new fire truck. Well, we're looking at the monies we got in our fire district tax, and we're getting some from that. And you saw from the thing earlier here today, we're starting to look at that, because once 2025, 2026 passes, and we've got some in a capital account, what, 20 some?
There's about 50,000.
About 50,000.
About 30,000 on this.
And yeah, we've got the fire district monies that we can look at on that. And then we're gonna have that debt service money that ends in 25, 26. So again, just so you know, we're looking at that to see how can we start putting some figures together that we can make a down payment on a truck that isn't gonna cost us an absolute arm and a leg to get because, good Lord, those things are getting expensive now. You used to, we're talking $300,000-400,000 to take your breath away, and Dale will tell you right now. I had to talk to him about it. I'll be surprised if he doesn't. I see things out there where, fire trucks, you're talking $1 million. I mean, I'm not exaggerating that. I mean,
That's
what, just a few years ago, what we used to be talking about at $300,000-400,000 by, talking about $1 million now.
The new ladder truck is not too.
Yeah. And, so we are looking at that, looking at debt service and all, and hope to bring that in, because that's one of the things that we just have to give the people here at the lake. It was good fire service. So I think one of the main takeaways tonight is understand that all we're doing at this point is we've got to come up with a budget, and we got to balance it, and we've got a balanced budget. But by all means, we don't, anytime that you want to contact me, Sean, anybody else, if we've got a revenue source we need to look at, let's do it. I'm ready.
Consider it contact.
Huh?
Consider it contact. I'll make send an email.
No, we'll look at it. We'll get it going. Okay. Anything else anybody's got we need to bring up tonight? If there is any change that you see as you study this and going forward, the only thing I'd ask you to do is be sure, and if there's something you see that's a problem, you need explanation on, you think it needs to change, be sure, if you possibly can, to bring it up to Sean by the May meeting at the latest, because we got to adopt this thing in June, and it's not fair to staff to come in and try to change it at the last minute. Historically, we have gone in and tried to adopt this at the June meeting. So and that's at the first part of June. And so if there's anything that you got that's concerned that you brought up, try to bring it in by May so staff can work on it. We can look at it at the June meeting and do what we need to do. And just keep in mind, if you got an expenditure, you need to bring a revenue. That's the way we do the budget. But I appreciate, I will say that, I have worked on the budget here for years. Y'all asked me to be the budget officer. I've been working with Sean on it. And I will tell you that our staff has just, I congratulate y'all for what you're doing on it. Amber has been doing a great job for us, and she's the one that, before we had Sean, that I relied on. She continues to do a great job on it. And now we've got Mary Jo in there too, and they're working together as a team, and we need that on the finance side. Lord knows there's so much more that we have to do as a town. It's like the chief and I have talked about, a number of years ago, we didn't have an assistant chief, didn't need it. Now somebody's doing paperwork all the time, and it just never stops. And we have to do it. And I'm just so proud of our folks that are working for the town and the job that they do. And when I was working with Sean on this and asking questions that I had on the budget and things that I wanted to see that we need to put in there, I mean, they had an answer just immediately. And quite frankly, I haven't always had that in the past. And again, that's not a reflection on Amber. She was doing all of it. I'm saying that we had other sources that I just wasn't able to get the answers on, but I'm real pleased with what y'all are doing. Y'all are doing an excellent job. All of our staff. So, folks, anything else that we need to address as far as the specific, I mean, this is what we met for tonight, this is specific budget proposal, there's a proposed balanced budget, and so again, anything that you've got that comes up on it, feel free to go ahead and contact Sean and things so we can discuss it. Let's bring up whatever we need to bring up by May so that we can get everything finalized. We can have it for adoption at the June meeting, and then let's go to work on seeing whatever revenue set you know, if we need to bring it. Okay. All right, anything else? Anybody else got tonight? If not, I appreciate all of you being here, and, we've got our regular meeting, the 14th, and so, at this time, if there be no further matters come to our attention, and there's nobody here public, for, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion second. Any discussion? All in favor, indicate by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Thank all of you for being here. Appreciate it.